So, one of the stupidest things that has actually come up and began to influence people in the semen retention community is this notion of the law of attraction. And basically, what it ultimately is it's a misunderstanding of laws in the universe. And one of the most interesting things about this misunderstanding is the biggest understanding of this um, uh, basically plague that has gone into the semen retention community is that people think that just because there is a natural law, or basically just because there is a law of attraction, I'm going to call it for the sake of this video, that means that we not only can control certain things with the thought, with the power of thought, but basically the idea is that we control the outcome of the thought, and that we control basically how the law itself works. It's basically the law of making laws in the universe, essentially, is how it's looked at. And that's basically what Ren is saying, and that's basically what a lot of these people on, some of these really new age, woo woo type people are beginning to say, and it's complete nonsense. Not only is it complete nonsense, but it's also a bastardization of the law of karma, and it comes from a lot of stupid misunderstandings. For one thing, the law of karma does exist, but the particular actions that you perform absolutely do matter, and they directly affect your vibration, regardless of what you personally think about it. Because basically, each element of manifestation is kind of like a different body part spiritually, right? Your thoughts might be your arms, but your legs are basically action, right? So if you want to get somewhere, and your legs are stuck in the ground, right? Your legs are buried in the ground. It doesn't matter how hard you pull with your legs, or your legs are chained down with infinitely strong chains, right? It doesn't matter what you think in your head or how hard you pull with your arms. You can get a little bit done, but you can never fully move the leg, basically. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. And one of the dumbest things about this is when dimensions get mentioned in this distortion, because when a lot of people think about dimensions in the spiritual sphere, they think of dimensions almost like a child, as it were. For example, I got this thing here. This is like a cube, right? And we measure dimensions as measurements. Like, for example, we know this right here has it has depth, right? Because you can see my finger pointing like this. We know that it has height, and we know the depth and the height is equilateral because each side is the same. We also know that that it has length, right? So the length, the height, and the depth they're all there, right? So in our mind, we think that this is a three-dimensional object. Obviously, everything has to exist simultaneously in the same number of dimensions. That's not to say there aren't different realms. There are. But everything has to simultaneously exist in the same dimensions, because, see, the way we think, one of the stupidest things about the way people think is they think in isolation. And for example, when it comes to nature, a lot of people get the idea that we're separate from nature because we don't live in the woods, right? But in fact, we are actually just a higher aspect of nature. It's not even that we're above nature. It's just that we're a higher aspect of nature. Dimensions are a lot like this. Ren talks about how if you want to manifest a perfect girl, it's going to take too much power, so don't do it. He's already admitting thoughts are not everything. Because why you need so much power, right? If thoughts are everything and the physicality is nothing. Obviously, there's a barrier, and it's more than just a mental barrier. Let me give you another example. You see, we think that because this is 3D, this must be 2D, right? Because we think to ourselves that there's height, and then there's length, but there is no depth. Well, actually, even if we just have one piece of paper, if I zoom in enough, you'll begin to see that the paper clearly has depth, right? This is a binocular camera, so it'll see one side, and then the other part of the camera won't see it, and you'll be able to see through it. But you can see that there's no such thing as a 2D object. There's no such thing as a 1D object. There's no such thing as a 2D object. And the same thing is true with dimensions. Everything simultaneously exists in the same number of dimensions. So this is true. So it's not like, a lot of people think that that the fourth dimension has the thought, and it's all the power, and that we're in the third dimension and we're going to the fourth dimension, or that right, the physical nature of the physical world is somehow 3D, and that the mental world is somehow 4D. Listen, it's not how this stuff works. Okay, we've been taught in the many spiritual teachings that despite all there being many different realms, these realms are not dimensions. We've been told that stay away from people who claim to be of the fourth dimension, because they don't know what they're talking about. This is clearly demonstrated in the classical occult teachings all over the world. All this New Age stuff is mainly rubbish, but there are some New Age teachings that are in fact true, like the fact that there are 7 dimensions. We know that all things not only have width, length, and depth, but it also has time as a dimension. Motion is definitely a dimension. For someone who can measure mind, if your consciousness has actually expanded enough, that thoughts are not things that control the universe. They are things in and of themselves, which is why they are able to attract certain things. It's not like this New Age nonsense Ren comes up with, that your thoughts just control everything. You're not Brahma, you're not Yahweh, you're not the Absolute. You are able to influence the law, but you are not the law. And, a lot of these New Age nonsensical ideas try to explain why these laws of attractions work, but they fail miserably. And believe me, Ren is going to slowly go downhill and not even know he's going downhill. Because the moment that you take power away from... see, this is another thing a lot of people don't understand. Metaphysical doesn't mean non-physical. A lot of imbeciles assume that. But what it actually means is that our understanding of the physical is not the only thing that exists, but there are many realms that we're affected by. And a lot of what this guy named Ren tries to debunk is this idea that, that what he tries to say is that everyone, the group soul or whatever, believes something, and so it's not true. Well, that's only true to a certain extent. There is a mind belt where thought forms are going everywhere inside the mind belt and distorting a lot of people's perception. But what they are also distorting is truth, right? They're keeping us from understanding how laws in the universe actually work. Because if we actually understood how they worked, we would actually be going uphill. We wouldn't be going downhill like a lot of these teachers are trying to teach. So, this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to the fourth dimension. I can get into all kinds of stuff about that, but we assume, because that we see an object that has three physical dimensions, we assume there must be one with two dimensions, there must be one with one dimension, one with zero dimensions, and therefore if we have zero dimensions all the way up to three dimensions, there must be a fourth dimension, but that's completely not how dimensions work. I mean, the physical dimensions are three, but there are many other dimensions that also must exist simultaneously. If there were a fourth physical dimension, which is not 100% impossible, it would exist simultaneously with the other three dimensions. So, anytime they say there could be flatlanders or whatever, maybe as an illusion, but definitely not as a practical mathematical concept. You'll notice that a two-dimensional plane has to at least be one by something. So, 1 by 1 is the so-called zeroth dimension, and, if you understand the zeroth factorial, right, you'll know that 1 is the zeroth factorial because that's the number of arrangements you can use to make 0. But, right, for a so-called two-dimensional object, it has to be 1 by 3 by 4 or 1 by 2 by 2 or something like that. It's always 1 by something, but you'll never see 0 by something, which means that the second dimension as a purely mathematical concept absolutely cannot exist, because there has to be a single unit which things are based on, and that implies within all dimensions, right? And so there are physical laws. It's not this airy-fairy woo-woo shit where things don't have structure and that they don't have to follow laws, because they absolutely do. And no matter what people on semen retention try to convince you, people like Ren are not Ein Sof. They are not the absolute highest aspect of Yahweh, God Almighty, Brahma. He might give that impression, but that's not what he is. Okay, and anybody who uses profanity, don't be taking their words too seriously, because they do not understand the power of curse words, and they do not understand the negative thought forms that are bind to those words, that when you utter them, that they cause bad things to happen. It doesn't matter how powerful you think you are, because you would have to be an avatar to purify that word, and it would have to purify throughout all the consciousness of the world, right? But some things you can't purify. You can't take something like, for example, sex, and use it for something it's not designed for, because that's not what God created it for, and therefore it is even more physical than the words we use. So I hope that makes sense.